Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of WAVY Science Lab. I am the host, meteorologist Jeremy Wheeler, and today we're going to be talking about the bathroom. No, not really. That's going to be a part of it. We are going to be talking about this particular item, but it's not going to be about the bathroom. It's going to be about paper. That's right, the riveting topic of paper. Who knew, right? And the paper chase. I believe that was a show on Showtime a long time ago. I don't know if there's a movie as well, but yes, that is not connected to that in any way other than the word paper and the name, I guess. But yes, we're talking about paper today, and so there's a lot to talk about with it. I have some interesting things, and I just thought it'd be an interesting topic to delve into. So let's do that, and let's get into what this is all about, paper and the history of paper and all about paper. So let's talk about it. Paper, used by many, understood by few, and we use it every day. Just so many things that it's connected to. So going into the history a little bit, before paper, people used various materials. Clay tablets, very famous, ancient times, ancient clay tablets, recorded history. Before that, it was, told in stories and things, but then they started to market. And then tree bark, papyrus, that was pretty popular for many years in ancient times as well. And that goes back pretty far. So papyrus in Egypt, 3000 BC. And so that was, of course, a long time ago, BCE. So, and then made by slices of papyrus plant layered on top of each other. And there's a bit of a process and then, drying and all that. Very interesting just in that part alone. Southeast Asia, palm leaves were used since 5th century BCE, and a sharp tool used to engrave whatever they wanted to write on top of those. Now, actual paper, though, so kind of the paper that you and I are familiar with, more or less, was first found in China, 200 BCE. So long time ago. Interesting that it was, I'm saying that a lot, long time ago. Your first official paper, 105 CE, TS, and this is, I believe, Chinese as well, Al Lun worked for the emperor, and so then there was a book written at one point. So that's, I guess, the first official time that they documented paper, but they believe archaeologists found it 200 years BCE. So we're talking about about a 300-year difference there, BCE and then 100 CE. So, I mean, yeah, that's a long difference before it was kind of official that they found that paper. Anyway, first paper was made from recycled nets. Bamboo fibers were soaked in ret for 3 months in large vats. Wow, that's a long time. Fibers pounded into pulp and then put in a mold, and then it was dried. It was dried out. So 600 CE, it was spread to Korea, used for animals for the grinding, right? Usually, I think I've seen that in the flour mills. Sometimes they put the ox or the horses, and they go round and round and round, and then they grind it. And then that was laid on wooden planks, and then dried out. 11th century, Muslims brought to Spain and then spread through Europe. And by 1254, Fabriano, Italy, was home to many paper mills, used cotton and linen in those mills. So North America, it took a little longer, of course. First paper mill in Mexico, 1575, Culhuacan, I believe, south of Mexico City. And 1575, not that long ago, right? But that was the first paper mill in Mexico. And then 1690, William Rittenhouse established the first paper mill in the British colonies. And this was all from the paper documented at the bottom there. You can see the link. That's where I got this from. You may find some differences, some subtle differences in there in these, but that's where I got that from. And then made about four reams of paper per day, which that's quite a bit back then. I mean, 1690. Think about that. That's a lot of newspaper. And then China, the first book printed was the Diamond Sutra, 868 CE, used reverse wooden blocks. So that's the thing. They use these blocks, and so they have to create them in reverse, which, I don't know how that would be done. I mean, I know generally how it's done, but to be able to do that, to create those wooden blocks, they're going to be reversed and then have the lettering in it, especially with the Chinese symbols, which, I'm a little bit familiar with. Just blows my mind to be able to do that, the talent and the skill. And I'm sure they developed a system for it. Maybe they wrote it down. Maybe they had some kind of material that kind of that they could actually reverse it and then get the wooden blocks from that. I don't know, but I didn't delve into it that much. But it was something. Now, 1450, Johannes Gutenberg, pardon me, invented the printing press, very famous. And then the Gutenberg Bible, 1452. All right, so that's a little bit of the history of it. Goes way back. Lots of details in there, and there's a lot of details. I mean, I kind of gave the highlights, but there's a lot of details also kind of filling in those blanks. And you can just go into it and look at it all you want. And some folks are like, "Wow, paper," but I mean, just to see how it evolved, and I mean, it changed history, it changed humanity because you want to get the word out early on. In order to do that, you had the town crier, right? Or maybe stories. There was that movie with, oh boy, I'm drawing a blank right now. Tom Hanks, where News of the World, I think, something like that. And he went and he would read the newspaper to folks. Of course, he had paper at the time, but I mean, it wasn't mass produced. So he would give he would tell stories, funny stories, news stories, things like that. Well, that happened much more early on without the paper, and so that's how the people would orate, and that's how they get the word out. So when they finally got these different ways to communicate, then that changed history, and just went on from there. And I've got a lot of examples of things. We have, as you know it, paper, and now we have printing, things like that. Of course, we have awesome printers. Of course, now many things are digital, but you still print out a lot of things, rundowns, for instance. So there you go. All right, so that's a little bit of the history of paper. Now we're going to go a little bit into this, but we're not going to have too much time, so I'm going to kind of break it up a little bit. So how they make paper, logging. They grab pine trees, fir, spruce. The long fibers of that are good there's a stronger paper, so it's good for packaging. Pine trees, fir, spruce. Oak, maple, hickory, short fibers, good for smoothness and printability. And then you get 36% of timber used for paper and paperboard. How about that? That's a pretty interesting statistic right there. So they use all these different types of woods, and I'm sure it's probably even more fine than that. Maybe there's certain types of pine trees that they use for these, that were better than others. Here's a good example. We had the tree podcast, so this is one, the loblolly pine. And that's one example. So we're, again, just delving into that a little bit, but we're going to have more information on this coming up, and we're going to go a little more into the logging part of it, and then we'll go into some fun things. We'll get into some examples of it. All right, so don't go away. All right, we are back, and we are talking about paper. All right. People love paper. Very, very cool topic today. Paper, we talked a little bit about how they make paper. We're going to get into that a little bit more right now. So let's take this. This is my computer. And so logging, right? We talked about the different types of trees. You got the pine trees, firs, spruce, the long fibers, and then oak, maple, hickory. So you got the examples here. Here's a example of a pine tree, a loblolly pine. Very tall. These things get up to, 75 feet, I think, something like that. And then here's a red maple. Good example of a type of tree they probably use. Another one, oak. And so the logging industry knows, which type of tree is good. And, there's probably different qualities of these trees. They probably grow them specifically for paper, certain types. I don't know if they even do some design for them, using genes, things like that, possibly gene editing. I don't know. But they log them. And so they had these big trucks, and you see these quite a bit, right? These large trucks that roll down the highway, and they have these large logs on there. So again, a certain proportion of them go to paper. I mean, of course, not all of these are for paper. It was 36%. Let's go to the end here. Yeah, 36% of timber used for paper and paperboard, and then other things as well. So they use these machines. And there's the claw right there, kind of like the claw machine. They go into and get the prize, right? So they get the claw and then put it on, and then they ship it to the paper mills. So these paper mills are very important. So they take them and then they strip the bark. at the paper mills. The bark is not used, so the remaining paper is sliced into many tiny little pieces, kind of like Fruit Ninja. And so they did it in tiny little pieces. And then there's mechanical and chemical pulping, but they do make it into a pulp. There's two different ways to do it. Paper mills use about half as much water as compared to 1975, but both chemical and mechanical use water. Chemical, they add a chemical, but they still chop it up. And mechanical, of course, they do chop it up. So then they make sheets. Now, before we get to that, I want to see if we can take a look here. So a while back, we had the video of the paper mill out in Franklin. So this is it. It's a paper mill. Very neat to see that from the vantage point of Chopper 10. This was from years ago. And you can see all the steam coming out. Again, it does use water in the process. And it looks like, we got the different smokestacks, steam stacks, what have you. And then you got conveyor belts, and there's, a good amount of people working out there. Again, this is out in Franklin, and bit of a smell. I've been out that way a time or two, and then also in Huntsville. When I worked in Huntsville, there was a paper mill, and it has a very distinctive smell. But people do tend to get used to it, I think. But yeah. So, and there's some of the trucks that may be taking it out. Those aren't logging trucks, so I can't imagine they're pulling them in. And then there's the wide view. Wait, you can see a little bit in the distance there. There's I think some of the pulp that they have, or at least some of the fibers in the far distance, kind of that lighter tan color. I think when it comes around here at one point, we'll see some of that. I'm just going to wait, and it's, oh, wow, there you go. That's really neat. So there's some timber, it looks like. I don't know if that's also used to make the paper, or if that's separate, if they separated it and they also ship wood out. I'm not sure about that. I didn't get a chance to ask anybody. It got really busy. But anyway, at one point you can see the pulp there. I think a big pile of pulp. And then it goes through the process. And I just want to take a look at this just a little bit longer. Then we're going to move on to, there it is. Le pulp. Yeah, how about that? That's really, yeah. And then there's it going up the conveyor belt. So I can't pause the video, but I mean, it's going for a little while there. And that's making paper in the process. All right. I don't know what that machine, oh, it's a conveyor, and maybe they layer it, the pile there. Wow, very cool. Okay, so again, that is a paper mill where they do all these processes, maybe a little bit differently, but this is the general way. So the pulp is placed onto a wire screen. Some water is drained, and then a thick web of fibrous material is pressed. So more water is drained out then at that point. And then it's dried over giant rollers. Now, I don't have any images of the giant rollers, but it's stated that some of them weigh over 40 tons. I mean, wow, that's huge. 40 tons. Can you imagine that? That's a submarine, isn't it? So anyway, then, they also make boxes. I don't know if they make them out there, but at that place, but the corrugated fiberboard. So basically there's paper, two thin layers, and that's made as mentioned in previous slides, but then they make the fluting, the piece of board in between the fibers. Special machine actually makes that. And, it probably automated, and it comes out just with that, the rigid part there. I've got an example. You can see it on the top of the box. So that's the corrugated part in the middle. And then, of course, they have the sheets on either side. So that's how they make the boxes. And they cut it, right? They cut each section. And then the pieces are, laid over on the side. And then another machine probably automated. The pieces are glued or stapled together and then cut accordingly. So, and you can, it can be glued or mechanically stapled, and that's how they make the boxes. And then we use about 1 billion of those things to get objects and products from certain places, which will not be named, but you know what I'm talking about. And so that's very popular, the box these days. And you can see them in the recycling bins. And we'll talk a little more about recycling here in just a little bit. Very good to do. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself. We're going to be talking about the Declaration of Independence. That's right, the Declaration of Independence. I actually went and got the actual copy of it right here. That's right, this is the actual Declaration. It's not, of course, but yes, we have an actual duplicate. And so we're actually going to take a look at that. And so the Declaration of Independence, it may be a little argued that it was written on hemp, but it was actually on parchment, according to the National Archives. That's where I got that from. And so this is a copy of the Declaration of Independence. Wow, it's been in there for a while, so it's hard. And you just kind of see the quality of the paper there. You know, it's kind of waxy a little bit. So that is what parchment is, and you can see. Gotta be careful here. Trying to be careful here, because it's so rolled up. But there it is. And so that is a copy from one of the gift shops up in Washington D.C. of the Declaration of Independence, and there's all the signers on the bottom. So we're gonna take a break, and we'll come back and talk more about that in just a little bit. All right, so stay with us. All right, we are back, and we are talking about paper, and we just got done talking a little bit about the Declaration of Independence. And we're going to talk a little more about that. So, you know, again, arguably, some folks argued it was written on hemp, but according to the National Archives, it was actually on parchment. Now, that sounds great. Okay, oh, parchment. Yeah, okay. Well, one thing I didn't realize, you know, what was parchment? What is parchment? So it was similar to the baking tool, right? You put parchment paper down on a cookie sheet, and that, you know, it's somewhat similar to that. But the thing is, old parchment was animal skin. Wow. I didn't know that. I just thought, oh, parchment. So likely it was on animal skin. Yeah, and I mean, you can tell the thickness there. That makes sense. These days they use plants and cellulose. So, you know, you're not using animal skin when you bake your cookies. But I believe, according to the site there, that this was on animal skin. Wow, who knew, huh? Parchment. So you might be able to find some folks that would argue, you know, what that was, what it was and what it wasn't. But that's the site that I got. And two sites actually said that, and a third, I think, actually as well, that AI now. But I did track that down. So this is from the archives, National Archives. So interesting. How many times have I said that? Anyway, yeah. Wow. So that's the Declaration of Independence, and of course my copy there. So some paper facts. Toilet paper, woohoo, started to be produced in 9th century China. Who knew? Long time ago, 9th century China. What did they do before then? I don't want to know, but I did dig into it a little bit, but we won't go into that. Bottom line is that's when toilet paper started, and you know, they used, I think, some other things before that point. So in the last 200 years, half of Earth's forests were cleared or burned. So some more little factoids in there. Interesting. Darn it. I said it again. Last 200 years, half of Earth's forests were cleared or burned. Just that statistic, amazing. And during lifetime, one American uses 465 trees for their paper needs. So I'm probably about halfway there, so somewhere in the 200s. So I saved some papers, so I think I got a ways to go. I can burn another 200. Yeah, so that's a lot of trees. And you think about that, you know. But for all the products we're going to talk about, you know, that's where it comes from. I mean, it's not just pieces of paper. Machine used to prepare tree fibers called a Hollander. Recycling 1 ton of paper saves 17 trees. Good to do. Yeah, I recycle, and you know, I'm glad to do it. But recycling isn't as efficient nor is used as much as it used to be, I believe. But still, it's good to try. And the largest producers by quantity, according to the site, U.S. and Canada. By volume, China. I don't know what the exact difference is there, but there you go. So recycling, right? You want to recycle your paper products. You know, cardboard items are separated into types and grades. When they do recycle, it's pulp with water and chemicals to separate the fibers. So, you know, this box here, that's what happens here. It's separated. And then, and of course, you have to separate it yourselves. You can't just put, you know, the glass in with the cardboard and all that stuff, the paper. You got to separate a little bit. Then they separate it, and it gets separated more and more. And then they separate it chemically with into fibers. And then inks, the film, and metal are removed, including staples, which is interesting. I didn't know that. Pulp and fiber are sprayed on a fast-moving sheet, and that sheet is pressed and water is removed, and then it is dried. So photo paper, coated with a light-sensitive material, light-sensitive emulsion, halide salts, and a gelatin. Interesting. There go again. Resin coating paper applied. This is me and my wife a long time ago. And that resin is what makes it water resistant and smooth. And then it's dried. And so, as far as other things go, stamps, maybe that's how they make them as well, because they do have that glossiness on them. There's some official stamps. And so, it's possible they use a bit of the same process there. Things made with paper, books, magazines, cardboard. Of course, we, looked at the cardboard there. You got all kinds of things. Of course, we talked about the toilet paper, so that's fun. And let's get some other examples in here. My magic box. And let's take the alter ego cam there. It's going to be, we'll use the same ego for this one. So paper towels, right? Paper towels, tissue paper for wrapping. Here is a folder, right? That's paper with paper in it. So it's paper on paper. Oh, sorry, I'll talk over to the microphone. Sorry about that. So that's paper on paper. And then you got the newspaper as well. Here's old newspaper. And then it's pretty neat because you can actually do what's called paper mache. And so when you do paper mache, you got the newspaper, you cut it into strips, and then you get flour and water, and then you put it over an object. You can put it over like a balloon, for instance, and then cover it up, and then let it dry. And you can actually pop the balloon, and then it'll still hold the shape. It'll dry, and then you can make a mask out of that. All kinds of neat things. Toilet paper holder, letters, right? Letters for sending to people, paper, and then you go out, receipt for a restaurant or what have you. Sometimes I keep the receipts once in a while if there's something like a big purchase or something like that. But yeah, and then of course there's the other things, tissue, napkins, cards, money. There you go. That's made out of paper, right? And then filters, air filters, bandages, surgical masks, and drywall. I didn't think about drywall, that was something that was used paper, but you've got basically, the liner, the outside of it is made out of paper, and then was it gypsum inside of it? Post-its. There you go. Post-its. 1968, Spencer Silver with 3M Labs invented a light adhesive. And then a few years later, Art Fry needed a temporary bookmark. He was in church, I think he wanted a temporary bookmark. And so then they put it together and created the Post-it. So it took a bit to convince the bosses, but then they let him try it out. And then everybody in the office loved it. And they said, okay, this is a hit. And then he marketed it, highly marketed it. So pretty cool. And everybody loves Post-its, right? Okay, so let's finish off with the environmental tip of the day. Don't recycle paper with food or liquid on it. A lot of folks do that. Pizza boxes, no, it's usually got the grease on it. Don't do that. Just make sure it's clean. Don't recycle wax or metal lined paper, and avoid getting paper boxes wet. Separate it from the glass plastic if it's posted. All right, that is the show for the day. It's on paper, but hopefully you learned a little something. I know I did, and take it with you, and now you can win on Jeopardy next time. Everybody, have a good day.